Marawi City is our ancestral domain.
This right here is the land that they stole from us, right here. They took it for their quarry.
Despite the threats of red tagging, despite threats of deportation, despite all the challenges, we were able to bring more than 20 people from the US to the Philippines. You were able to visit communities from Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao and see at first hand the impact of foreign intervention and the normalization of US intervention in the lives of our people.
Hindi natin alam kung ano nga ba talaga ang objective ng US. Parang ginagamit lang din naman tayo. Sino ang maghihirap? The Filipino people. Right?
'Maskara'y hindi nagtatago, ito'y nagbubunya. Walang buhay ang maskarang taglay, sa sarili mo'y nagbibigay buhay. Magmaskara, mag-ingat.
127 years ago, the Filipino people were on the verge of winning their revolution for national liberation after more than 300 years of Spanish colonial rule. 1 year later, in 1899, another foreign aggressor snatched victory from their grasp. The Philippine-American War was the United States' first conquest overseas as a fledgling imperialist power. While it is almost impossible to know the exact figure of Filipinos killed during the more than decade-long war, low estimates put the number at 200,000. More realistic estimates put it at over 1 million, out of a population of only 7 million at the time. Today, over 100 years later, the real history of the Philippine-American War has all but vanished from textbooks. But the presence and control of the United States in the Philippines, far from vanishing, remains deeply rooted in the country's economy, politics, and culture. In the spring of 2024, 28 delegates from the United States traveled to the Philippines. We integrated with farmers, fishers, workers, indigenous peoples, women, people of faith, and youth, all to learn the lasting legacy and current-day impacts of U.S. military presence on Philippine soil. These are their stories of war, land, repression, and of the people's resistance. After more than 4 decades of being an American colony, the Philippines was granted nominal independence in 1946.
To proclaim the independence of the Philippines as a separate and self-governing nation.
But that didn't mean the U.S. left the archipelago. Through the Bases Treaty, the U.S. established Clark Air Base and Subic Naval Base, which at the time were the U.S.'s largest overseas military bases. In the decades to follow, the U.S. military was responsible for environmental destruction, violence against women and children, and even for dragging Filipinos to fight in wars they did not want to be in, like the Vietnam War. By 1991, a protest movement of Filipinos across the country forced the Senate not to renew the basing agreement. It was an unprecedented victory that even caught the U.S. off guard.
There are so many issues against the bases, but the main issue was the issue of sovereignty, right? The best propagandists are the youth, especially the students, because they're always more open, to new ideas. Among students, to popularize the anti-bases campaign. Most schools would organize a forum on the US bases or debates. We knew these politicians will never act against the bases if there's not a strong public sentiment against them. Until we were convinced that politicians can already feel the pulse of the masses against the American bases. Finally, we were able to convince Congress.
Keen on maintaining the Philippines as a strategic geopolitical foothold in the Asia-Pacific region, the U.S. would go on to collude with subsequent Philippine administrations to enact various military agreements that would effectively circumvent the ban on U.S. bases.
They thought that maybe there's a way that American forces can still visit the Philippines, right? So first they have this VFA, Visiting Forces Agreement.
U.S. troops! Out now! U.S. troops! Out now! Imperialismo!
The 1999 Visiting Forces Agreement, which allowed for U.S. troops to return, and the 2014 Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement.
Critics of the new military deal between the Philippines and the United States have a basis to be concerned. The Enhanced Defense Cooperation Agreement, or EDCA, allows the U.S. to build military facilities and pre-position defense assets in agreed locations that are yet to be determined by the two countries. While EDCA limits the agreed locations to existing Philippine military bases, Marcos says it's possible for the Philippine Armed Forces to establish new bases if the U.S. asks for them. The locations are limited to areas the military determines to be strategic for the two countries' mutual interests. Strategic refers to factors like maritime security, maritime domain awareness, and humanitarian assistance and disaster response.
Initially, we don't have any American presence in Basa. There are only, I think, 2 EDCA sites before. Basa has always been one of the first because it is strategically located. We are facing China Sea, although we call it West Philippine Sea now.
Under Ferdinand Bongbong Marcos Jr., son of former dictator Ferdinand Marcos Sr., U.S. military buildup has been on overdrive. This escalation is being carried out in the context of the intensifying U.S.-China rivalry. In 2023, 4 new de facto EDCA bases were announced, bringing the publicly disclosed total to 9. These bases are shrouded in mystery. Their exact locations are unknown to residents, and Filipinos can't even enter without authorization from the U.S. These EDCA bases, like their predecessors, have been met with widespread protests from women's organizations, fisherfolk, indigenous peoples, environmentalists, youth, academics, and many more sectors of society. While these groups also oppose China's territorial aggression in the West Philippine Sea, they understand that agreements like EDCA have already turned the entire archipelago into a U.S. base, threatening the lives and the livelihood of the Filipino people.
Yung negative side nun is parang nagagamit tayo na nasa sumasawsaw tayo yung bansa natin, which is alam naman natin na yung dalawang bansa na yun is superpowers. So yung sa atin, sa Pilipinas, wala. Parang gagawin lang tayong backward nila. Parang ginagamit lang din naman tayo. Ginagamit lang ang bansa natin. Hindi natin alam kung ano nga ba talaga ang objective ng US. Hindi natin alam kung positive nga ba talaga, allied ba natin talaga sila. Saan tayo pupulutin? Yung baga nakikisaw-saw tayo doon sa problema nila, tapos pagdating ng kalaunan, baka iwan din tayo ng US.
The runway has been rebuilt using American funds. They have put up 4 big barracks for Americans only. Filipinos cannot stay there. With so many air cons. You can see the Filipino barracks nearby. They only use fan. I'm not in favor of it. Because if there is going to be a war, no one will survive from this place. And we don't know anything about it. They are trying to bring up the problem of West Philippine Sea, which I think can be diplomatically solved, not by armed conflict. We've gone through that during the Second World War when we were still a protectorate of US. And the people who liberated the Philippines are not the Americans, neither the USAPE. In Central Luzon, they are the Mulahaps. Sorry to tell you, but more Filipinos are in favor of having EDCA. That's the sad part in the Philippines. We rely on American support in case there will be a war between China and the Philippines. Americans will not going to support us. There are billions and billions of dollars in commerce in China, while the Americans, I think they are the fourth among foreign investors in the Philippines.
As the northernmost point of the Philippines, Cagayan is the closest province to Taiwan. The EDCA sites in Cagayan Valley are located within and around a special economic zone, which allows foreign companies to evade taxes, skirt labor law, and plunder raw materials from the local community. We saw firsthand how the U.S. exploits these facts to drag the people of Cagayan and the entire Philippines into war provocations against China.
Especially yung nangyayaring tension between China and Taiwan na kung saan kaalay ni Taiwan si US. Konektado ba yung paglalagay ng EDCA site dito sa Santa Ana at saka mismo sa lalo doon sa paliparan? In preparation ba ito sa pwedeng mangyaring giyera? So, nandyan yung mga katanungan na pinagdugtong-dugtong natin yung mga nangyayari ngayon. Nandyan yung takot, yung pag-aalala na what kung mangyayari yan, mangyayari nga.
Sa time ng reforestation namin, nandun kami sa walang kahoy. Nasa bundok lang siya. Kasi doon kami nagtatanim ng mga nara. Ang nara, isa sa pag-produce ng honey. Kaya nagtanim kami ng tanim ng nara. Nabigla kami noon. Kaya biglang may dumating na helicopter doon. Ayaw, tatlo yata yung sunod na helicopter. Sabi ng matanda sa amin, dapa kayo, baka putok ka. Ay, hindi na namin tinuloy yung tanim namin, pababalahan. Tapa, sabi. Kung na dyan may isang Endorse na. Apo, tinaganda tayo sa amin, tibalan, apay nakadado da kita. Apay nga nagsasaro no meten, ti helicopter, ti kasama ng mga sa community. So, paano na kung maghulog ang mga yan ng mga bomba, patay tayo lahat. Wala pong announcement kung bakit nandyan, kung bakit palagi ang mga lumilipad ng mga helicopter. Wala pong sinabi. May idea kami. May gera. Basta editi ko, kanayon nga, agsubli-subli nga, kwati army nga, agsubli-subli dito. Last week, ganun, din na naman, bumalik na naman yung American. Tapos palagi ng firing nila dyan sa malapit sa port. Palagi ang firing po dyan. Marami pangamba kung bakit. Marami pang bakit. Bakit ang dami nila dyan? Bakit palagi ang mga tao dyan? Marami ang pangamba. Hindi man ngayon kung baka sa mga anak namin. Hindi na namin iniisip niya na papaalisin nila kami kasi Since memorial nandito mga ninuno namin. Kaya nga namin gusto namin pag-aralin ang mga bata makapagtapos para alam na nila kung ano yung karapan nila sa ancestral domain. Dapat sinabihan kami ang naninirahan dito para alam namin kung anong gagawin namin. Kung hindi kami yung gano'n na tatakutin tapos bibiglaan lang na ang daming pangamba.
U.S. militarism affects communities beyond just those adjacent to EDCA bases. Joint war games between both countries' militaries totaled over 500 in 2024 alone, the biggest of which, the Balikatan exercises, brought war to the shores of Ilocos.
Awmati after the awmati talaga makita mo kumangati adama agtatapaw nga ikan ka dyan band dito sa dagat. All barangays
of labas, so 5 barangays.
From Bakaradin and the other Tupagudpod. Putok-putok, akala namin gubatan na.
Madamati panangalan ti kuwagit. Nagtamat di Coast Garden. Sumrek kang, tapay nakadayo tayo kunak mo. Mapay nga policy namin naman.
Nakapano kayo di asayos?
Well, napansin na to.
Parang titibigan.
Makasit sila ni
alas 7 ko na dati start na di Balikatan. Kita ako pa alas 7 ko rasak ko na di Pusga.
Kanila mga amigo.
Nag-alas kayo sa Facebook. Nag-Facebook ka.
Sir.
On Facebook.
When you are inside your house, it looks like your bubong is gonna be going down.
Okay.
Nakita namin ang dami ng sundalo. O bakit kaya nga ang daming ganon?
Nakano ti nariknayo mati ti military exercise kat kasi degdetail nyo.
Medyo kabakabakam na ta sir ata. Pata China kat nga binumbada na tinira da iti kamputa Marines di tangga tawanan ni ramang kamot wala data ni boundary ta Burgos kun nakabu nabila.
Noong pong Balikatan exercise, pinagbawalan po yung mga mangingisda na pumalaot. Then dito sa aming barangay po, meron pong 11 or 18 fishermen na nakatanggap po ng ayuda mula sa gobyerno. Isang 1,000 plus, then worth for 500 na food pack. 18 out of 200.
Natanggap mi nga may isa from the mayor.
Ano tayo dyan, tanggap?
Cash, 1,000 cash money and a food pack worth 500.
Minsan lang?
Ada pa incoming.
Incoming.
Kano? They say there is more. But the other barangays, naawat lang. The other day.
The other day only? Not during Balikatan exercise?
No. After the Balikatan. After 2 days.
Sapat po yun, yung 1.5.
Actually, no, not enough.
Anot kinanda nga ro din. Ikat sanda nga nanganon. Umutang.
Credit road to the canteen or the
Get now, pay later.
kahit hindi na sana. Pero sabi nila mayroon na daw ulit this coming August.
DJ agangal kam latamo nga ngumamantuman no nasagit latam tinagab niya ta na stop ti kwami awan tumat kami may sal daw matam ko namin mit DJ pa.
not look as far back as the Philippine-American War to understand the consequences of U.S. war. In 2017, former President Rodrigo Duterte ordered the Philippine military to launch a so-called surgical operation to capture the leader of a militant group in the city of Marawi. What followed was a brutal 5-month siege and Duterte's imposition of martial law across the entire island of Mindanao. Marawi city center was leveled to the ground by carpet bombing, using warplanes, weapons, technology, and intelligence provided by the US, the Israeli state, Australia, and others.
Before the siege and during the siege, the Americans are here. Yeah, they were advising the military government of the Philippines and on how to pursue with the siege. And they are also providing intelligence and technologies. You know, in 2008, we opposed the Balikatan exercise here in Marawi City. We even camped outside the Ayala Resort Hotel where their forces are. We even throw tomatoes and it's the first time here that you will see an American soldier running to their cars for fear of being mobbed because the people are very angry at them. Everywhere they go here, they are being mobbed. There were protests, demonstrations. That's why they decided to abort the U.S. Balikatan exercise. Understand that we have a history, unhealed history between the Americans and the Filipinos. One of the biggest campaigns in the Philippines by the Americans is the Lanao campaign, where they killed many of our leaders, datos, and traditional leaders. And to some, that wound is still there.
As far as the photo documentation that got from our friend that before the Marawi siege, many from military soldiers in America, Australia were very visual in Marawi and in Ligan at the time. And we have also documented that during the fighting, the American government, American soldiers supported a lot of intelligence and a lot of equipment.
Marawi was the Muslim capital of the Moro people. Decades of history and culture in one center.
Our identity of who we are is actually linked to the ways and culture of the place. That's why in 2016 we were bombed and the city was raised to ground zero.
Over 100,000 displaced indigenous Maranao continue to live in uninhabitable conditions and are denied the right to a just and dignified return to their homes by the government.
Yung karanasan po namin sa during siege, nung nagsimula ang gera, akala po namin na yun po ay haka-haka lang. Kami naniwala doon, sabi nila may gira daw. After mag-3 days, may gira daw sabi nila. Pero pagdating ng 3 days, totoo pala. Yung mga nangyari sa mga tao, parang nababalik sila, hindi sila alam kung saan sila pupunta. Yung iba, naglakad ng lakad kung saan pupunta. Kasi yung mga item na yun, yung pinapalis nila yung mga civilian. Diba, pag di ka umalis, napatay nila.
So many IDPs here are suffering hard. No money, no food, no hospitalization, no medicines, and others. Our children suffered a sickness, but we cannot brought it to the hospital because we do not have money. That is the problem there. The city government and the provincial government do not give us supply and medicines.
The safe and dignified return in Maranao term is kambalingan. We know that rehabilitation in Marawi is very good, but how are they able to say that it is a good Marawi if there is no people? We want to go back in there, we are safe, that we want to secure that we have livelihood, we want to secure that we have education, Because we know that the project in Marawi City is not a Marawi. It's not New Marawi, it's New Makati. Sometimes we feel that it's not for Marawi or the Maranao people. It's for the tourists, just to attract tourists. Sometimes that we feel that, the problem of the Philippines, the country, is not just the poverty, overpopulation, or what is this, but it's the system itself. If the system is not being changed, there is no change.
At the end of the day, for us, until the issue of poverty, until the issue of discrimination, until the issue of all other historical injustices that is inflicted to the Moro people and to the Marano, until all of this issue is not addressed, I think balikatan and other international military exercises is not advantageous.
Militarization of the area has steadily increased since 2017. Today, EDCA funding is being floated to construct the military base in Marawi, announced by former President Duterte in 2017. Taking 10 hectares of the land, this military base will become the second largest in the Philippines. The government wants to turn Marawi into a base for tourism and military activity.
According to our source, the EDCA fund is now prepared to provide at least 400 million, partial amount to be given to Marawi military people for the construction of that military. If you look at in Marawi 375 elevation, in the map you are looking south to China Sea, Palawan, and so on and so forth. And if the military facility will be situated in Marawi, and all the communication and facilities will be there, if the sleeping giant China and America will fight in the coming days, we don't know, Marawi will be very, very potential for bombing as part of the area where China will destroy this community because of military facilities offered by the American government.
While China's territorial aggression in the West Philippine Sea often takes center stage in the media, it pales in comparison to the ongoing occupation of the entire country by the United States and the violence this continues to bring to the Filipino people. This begs the question, what will happen to the Filipino people, who are sure to be caught in the crossfire if the US were really to go to war with China?
From the Philippines to the United States, please bring home stories of the impact of the war and intervention, but more importantly, please bring back the stories of resistance. That here in the Philippines, the Philippine government might be welcoming the US troops, but the Filipino people are resisting. Filipino people are defying US intervention, and we are asserting our sovereignty.
Natin muli ang tulo ng karunungan, muling pag-alabing ang diwa ng himagsikan. Apoy ng mga larangan ay paglagam-labin. Ito'y dakilang hamon, paninin sila natin.